All right. Welcome everybody to the Racial Equity Subcommittee meeting. I guess the time is 6:01 p.m. and this is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing Racial Equity Subcommittee. Next slide, please. Okay, let's start with introductions. I'll first ask our subcommittee members to introduce themselves. Let's begin with Byron, the chair of this subcommittee.
Cool. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member since 2001, August of 2001, chair of the Racial Equity Subcommittee. And thank you for being here and taking time. Pastor Celeste, or I'm not sure whose name is.
Good evening, everyone. Celeste Carey, co-chair of the PCCEP and member of the Racial Equity Subcommittee. Good evening, everyone, partners and public. And Pastor.
I did everything, but my name isn't Celeste. Thank you, everyone. Excuse me if I'm driving tonight. I just left the meeting, so please forgive me if I'm on not video, but I am on and listening.
Excellent. Thank you, PCCEP members. Now I will invite any city staff present, PPB representatives, DOJ or city attorney's office representatives who are here. I will start. I'm Dory. I'm the PCCEP project manager. Anyone else can just jump in.
I'm Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns. I'm a deputy city attorney. I just wanted to let everybody know that Mary Claire could not be here tonight, and so you won't be seeing her face as you usually do.
Are there any other partners that Jared or whomever wish to introduce themselves? And I see Leslie here too.
Oh yeah, sorry, Leslie.
Oh, that's okay. I'm not a part of the subcommittee, but I am a PCCEP member. I joined August of 2022, and I'm glad to be here with all of you tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Hager, he, him pronouns with the Department of Justice. Thanks for having me in your meeting.
Hi, Samir Kamel, Community Safety Division Advisory Boards and Commissions Manager. Thank you.
You're on mute.
Was Emily on mute? Well, that was Emily. She's one of the project assistants who supports PCCEP. It's always a little touch and go when you're doing sound in the same room on computers. Okay, anyone else? Any other staff? Okay, how about members of the public? Anyone wanna say hi tonight?
Hey y'all, it's Barb Rainish. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a community member and a member of the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council.
And Barbara Boshinsky, Portland Cop Watch. Thank you.
Barbara? All right, thank you, everybody. Good to see you tonight. And I think next up we have, if I'm remembering correctly, our community agreements. Byron, would you read those for us?
Sure. Listen actively and respectfully. be okay with ambiguity, share airtime, be present and open to new information, perspectives, call out bias, ask questions to clarify, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, and speak your own truth. I think I got
Excellent.
everybody.
Great, thank you, Byron. All right, and now let's take a look at what we are going to be covering in tonight's meeting. So we're going to start off with doing a little bit of work on the independent monitor recommendation that PCCEP as a whole has decided to move forward with. There are some portions of the recommendation and all PCCEP recommendations moving forward that kind of specifically address racial equity, mental illness, and how communities are engaged in drafting recommendations that we're going to be focusing on specifically. And then in the second half of the meeting, we are going to be having continuing our discussion about gunshot detection technology and thinking about the ways that surveillance technologies intersect with some of the things we talk about in this subcommittee. And then we will have an open public comment period. Okay, so let's move into the first portion. So Byron, I will now hand it over to you, our chair.
Thank you, Dory. Independent monitor recommendations. We're going to focus on the section that evaluates racial equity and mental health impact. Forgive me if I'm new at this, and that is not an excuse. So, thank you, Dory. We have any feedback? Do I need to read the recommendations or not the the agenda?
So the agenda, what all I put on there was the questions that are kind of down here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea here is we'll just kind of, continue the process of writing this. And Celeste has gotten a head start on this first part, but that is still complete. That's just sort of a, draft, I think, that she thought would be helpful to look at as a starting point. And
I wanted to give thank you for saying that, because I was wondering, Celeste, if you don't mind.
Just
Are you
kind of
ready?
cover. Yeah, I just need, hold on.
No worries.
Okay, so this very first question is, how does this recommendation redress barriers to racial equity? And one of the concerns of having an independent monitor is not only are they independent and their contract is not under the purview of the city, but it gives them, if we get somebody who is local, it gives them a more sense of immediacy and connection to the local issues here in the community. And one of the concerns we have is that we have a group, or we have a monitor, or we have whomever the entity is, able to address this really critical concern that some of the issues and recommendations that have come from the committee or they've not really been discussed or implemented, and it can be a detriment to the minority population here in Portland to not have someone able to bring our concerns prominently either to the city or to the Department of Justice. And by concerns, I also mean not just over policing in the community, but concerns for the intersectionality of mental health and policing and similar concerns. And so we feel that by having an independent monitor, we've got a local, immediately accessible familiar with our specific situations entity who can really prominently promote our concerns. Did I leave anything out, Byron, or during
No.
our meeting? Okay.
And I would like to add that this also, Barry, also, it can trigger things into the African American community, where we don't think that maybe we might not be heard. The mental health portion is very, 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 very troubling in the African American BIPOC people of color community. So I just want to piggyback on that from what Celeste was saying. Before I move forward, Pastor, are you capable of saying anything, or did you want to add something?
Actually, you're doing a great job, Byron. I'm applauding you from driving here. No, I think Celeste covered a very good portion. I think, again, from history, I think even where that the last meeting with Jared, it gave a very good sense of how and we came about thinking and trying to address this issue. So I think that everything is being covered very well and said so far.
So should we read what we have so far for kind of, I guess, question one, so to speak? And then
Bullet
kind of
point.
see if we want to, bullet point one, and see if we want to kind of, if there's anything to build on there. And also I should mention, we are of course interested in hearing input from anyone here tonight, as well as we're working on this recommendation.
I'm also driving, so I'm listening very attentively, and I can't read any of the.
So it makes sense, I think, to read out loud what we have so far. Celeste, do you want to go ahead and read the question and then what we have so far?
Yes, just how does this recommendation redress barriers to racial equity? An independent monitor process will help advance the settlement agreement, period. If the city achieves and maintains full compliance, the remedies in the settlement agreement will benefit communities of color and promote racial equity. And I would say promote racial equity within our relationship with the Portland Police Bureau. And did you want me to read the second one, or should we just kind of focus on finish addressing this first question?
So I guess we could see, is there any input sort of on what we have so far before moving on? And maybe it's solid.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask, Dory. Between each bullet point, we get feedback from the members and then we get feedback from the community, or can we go through all three bulletins and hopefully the community members that are listening can take notes on each three bulletins and they can come back with questions for each one's, or ideas if that's possible.
Yeah, whatever you think.
Okay. Pastor Wisner, are you okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, as far as with the independent monitor recommendation drafting session, we got bullet point 2 is how does this recommendation improve outcomes for a person with mental illness? And speaking with a few people, it gives them self-confidence, gives them direction, it builds self-morale, because it also can trigger other things that they didn't even know that they had. And so it gives them,
It gives them a voice. That's what you've been saying.
Yes.
It in the same way it promotes concerns from communities of color, it promotes concerns from the community of people addressing mental health challenges, whether they are people directly addressing it or family members. and even, slightly removed caregivers. It gives them a voice, a present voice, somebody that's right here that they can see and work with.
So it gives them, thank you, Celeste, that was beautiful. It gives them stability in the workforce, in relationships, in dealing with everyday people. I believe there needs to be some type of follow-up on these things. Maybe I'm going a little too left field.
Well, no, you're not, because you're mentioning something. You just reminded me of something that we had talked about at the first bullet. And one of our challenges is that having somebody here helps us present what's not being heard. I mean, there's not just amplifying the voices, but addressing what's not being heard. And the current setup has allowed us to have an infinite span of small steps forward. And, small steps forward are good, but after all this time, it should not be such small steps forward. We should have made much more progress. And I find that having concepts like partial compliance just stretches the process out infinitely. So instead of having a very firm foundation of and clear expectations of what should be done, we keep slicing these very thin slices off of this concept called compliance, and we're being satisfied with these very small steps. And I think having somebody prominent and independent, it echoes some of the things that we've heard from the Department of Justice in terms of changes that need to happen. And I think that really is effective for not just the minority communities, the BIPOC communities, but especially people in the mental health community, those addressing mental health challenges, because they want to see, we all want to see some progress, and not these very small incremental steps in that direction. Not partial compliance, but total compliance, real compliance. Did I capture what you were saying, Byron?
Most definitely.
Okay.
And I'll just underline that, because it really just comes down basically to that's exactly what we need. Someone that's close enough to understand the environment, understand where we've been, how we're going. And it sounds like, and I'm not sure there, maybe Jared or Sarah can pack in, we will be needing to replace that experience from what they had done before, but we need someone right now here local that understands the environment we're in right now.
I believe also maybe knowing that it's a homegrown entity that is performing this task, being local, that it's, or is that up in the first bulletin maybe?
And there can absolutely be overlap here. I think there likely
Okay.
is. Yeah, based on kind of everything that I'm hearing. I see a couple hands if we want to go to those. It's up to you, Byron.
Yeah, who was first?
I think Jared is first.
Please.
Hi, thanks, Byron. Thanks, Dory. I appreciate the subcommittee looking at this issue. I know it's been on the mind of several community members, including, I want to say, at the last status conference, former Senator Avell Gordley spoke to this issue, and I think she has spoken to the PCCEP as well about her view that a monitor is important. And I would encourage you to understand from, some of those folks who have made the call. I think, members of the AMAC, Reverend Haynes has spoken to this issue. Dr. Bethel, before he passed, had reasons to support this. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to consider this recommendation. As far as the substance, I don't want to, put a thumb on the scale either way. I think it's for the community to give their input. One, point of clarification I want everyone to understand, both on the committee and in the public, is, the idea of an independent monitor doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a Portlander. For example, in the Albuquerque case that I work on, the lead monitor is in Florida and South Carolina. And deputy monitors live in New Jersey, and they come out to Albuquerque. So, but it's perfectly reasonable and acceptable for the committee and the public to say, if there's an independent monitor, they really need to be a local presence, or they need to have members of their team. Our current COCL has, Amy Ruiz and several other people who are in the Pacific Northwest and here in Portland. The Department of Justice is headquartered in DC, but I live here in Park Rose. So, members of the team can be local or more nationally based. But, I did want to make that distinction that just be, if the parties were to agree to a monitor, there's still a question about who the monitor would be. And I think it's appropriate to craft a recommendation to say they should be local, or members of their team should be local for all the reasons that you've said. And so that's just the point of clarification I wanted to raise. I'm happy to answer specific questions if you have them, but otherwise I'm going to, let the public and the committee craft this how they like. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared, for that. That was wonderful. Barb?
Thanks, Byron. I've been here for the meetings that have been public, and I'm familiar with this form, and I'm still a little bit confused about exactly what you guys are doing from the standpoint of, it seems like you're starting in the middle with giving, or even at the end with giving the reasons, but I'm not sure if you guys have crafted a recommendation at all, which is what was a little bit confusing to me, given that we're talking about how great it would be if it's local, but I don't know if that's being included in the recommendation, like what Jared was saying in terms of like assumptions or what have you. So if you could like back up just a little bit to explain that part of it, that might help other people understand exactly what's going on if we haven't been at all of the meetings.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, PCCEP is united in the goal to get this recommendation written on a somewhat tight timeline. They're hoping to have this written and voted on before the status conference hearing. So really before their full PCCEP meeting on February 15th, I think. And so we are kind of directing the drafting process in ways that accommodate that timeline. So the Racial Equity Subcommittee is working on this portion, and then the body of the draft will be written elsewhere, all in public meetings. But of course, in total, and so this is, the benefit of public meetings is that the public gets to see this whole process unfold, but sometimes things get written in, interesting ways. And so the public will also be able to see, the entire polished written recommendation when PCCEP votes on it in that full committee meeting. So hopefully it will be more clear when it's more polished and put together and complete.
Thank you for that, Dory. Celeste, I believe, then Sarah. I'm not sure.
I can wait till after Sarah because I've had a chance to speak and I do want to hear our input.
Please, Sarah.
Thank you, Celeste, and Byron. I just wanted to echo what Jared said, and to, each of these, independent monitors are actually a team. And so you have one person who is the monitor, but they have a team of experts who have different expertise. And it would be very, I think, helpful to the process and the conversation moving forward if PCCEP and the community weighed in not only on monitor, not monitor, which is the threshold question, right? But then if we do end up switching to an independent monitor in this, case, then what characteristics do we want the team to bring to the table? What is most important, from PCCEP in the community, and you've talked about some of those things, having a local presence, understanding the Portland community, understanding where we've been and how, some of the things have gone. You've also talked about expertise in mental health and crisis intervention. So, some of just the different, what are the aspects that you would like us, when we put out, the eventual request for proposals or request for resumes to solicit applicants to be the monitor or the monitoring team, what do you think is most important to be included in that request? So that's kind of the two questions, monitor, no monitor, argument for, recommendation on that. And then what's essential, do you think? But that's just kind of how I see this recommendation being very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Celeste.
So, to combine what Sarah and Jared has said, and then to also answer a couple of other questions that I think I've gleaned. In terms of a positive critique, one of my concerns is that the current structure we have for monitoring reporting has allowed and not pointed out, I think, emphatically enough, how little progress we've made in getting things accomplished. We're still struggling in the murky waters of partial compliance. And whereas I understand, and thank you, Jared, for having explained it to us a few times, that it means that there's being some progress made, that kind of metric allows us to stay in limbo forever. And so I'm questioning the efficacy, the effectiveness of our current structure of handling things when we have a metric that seems to allow very little progress to be made, doesn't seem to hold the police bureau as pointedly accountable as they should be for making some of the changes. And when you go back and you read some of the statements made by people in the hearings, the fact that PCCEP itself has made recommendations that have kind of gathered dust on a shelf, it seems like there should be some more prominent reporting that we're not really, I just feel like we are in a standstill. And so my question then is, if we're not seeing progress in terms of meeting the settlement agreement requirements, and we're not getting enough reporting so that the public understands we're not making progress, then my question is, how is our current structure working? I don't see it working. And so I'm, it's kind of one of those situations, if we're not getting if we're not achieving the goals set forth in the settlement agreement, what are we doing? And are we just celebrating imaginary progress, pieces of progress? Are we framing it so that lack of progress is celebrated and we're pretending we're getting somewhere? And I'm just asking that really real question because the fact that we still have recommendations from PCCEP from a couple of years ago that seem to be unheard, that we're still having some of the same complaints when we have the status hearing, does not give me confidence that this particular metric, this particular evaluation process is working. I'm not seeing the results that we should be seeing after all this time.
Thank you for that, Celeste. That was beautiful. I don't think anybody's here to answer or who can, speak on what you just spoke on. I don't know if there's anybody here that could. I would really appreciate it.
Well, even if there's not right now, that's okay, because by asking these questions, what we do is we force another level of discussion, and we force another level of action to the table, and so that's, it's basically saying, okay, we're saying that it's not working. If people disagree, show us how it is, show us the progress. And then we're going to still build in, as Sarah had, we're going to put together an evaluation process to determine not only what kind of qualifications a monitor would have, but what are the outcomes and goals we expect to see. And then what tools, or not so much what tools, what actions we want from the police bureau in terms of meeting the settlement agreement terms. And I know that a court monitor doesn't necessarily have any more power to compel the police bureau to make the necessary changes than the COCO does. But again, I'm looking for a model that's going to get us to where we should be, as opposed to giving us an elegant system of marking time and capturing limbo.
So to bring that back around to this document, how is this discussion informing this second item here?
I think it echoes the same ones we had at the top.
Mm-hmm. Well, now within the recommendations, we can, or I'm not sure if we are capable of allowing them showing up to our racial equity meetings. Because you shouldn't have said that, Celeste, that we're doing all this yet nothing has changed.
Well, tell me why you think that. I mean, I want to hear some discussion, so I'm all ears.
Pastor Wiseman, please help me.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to, again, listen, and here I hear what we're needing in the recommendation. So far, the reports that we have had, I've heard Celeste said the partial compliance to compliant, out of compliance, whatever that language is that they have. We have to, in areas of needing someone to be, I'm trying to be diplomatic in this at the same time watching the road. So please forgive me in this language here.
Please.
So I'm gonna just be pretty close to blunt as possible. When we don't receive the information that's truthful from the Bureau, are reasons that I think there's something that they just not showing and giving what needs to be reported. And I'm not saying that Dennis Rosenbaum and them didn't give a truthful statement of what they see, but didn't hold anything. I don't see us holding them accountable, the city, like this slide that went out there, and we found out later on, and there was, I think the courts are still trying to decide when, and y'all help me if I'm right, why this happened, who put everything that the judge is saying that it's not enough to just continue to talk about it, but we need to see the change. And there have been progress, I understand, but I don't know. I just don't feel that we're in the place right now of understanding the recording, the organizing, and what it is that we make our recommendation out of to give a clear understanding of what has been missing and what is needing now. We need this now. Jared and Sarah, you guys are the expert. The community has been involved with this for the longest and knowing the problems that's there. We have to have the ideal and us as a group here be more precise in how we are requesting this from what we have seen not done. I just have to say it like that. And,
I mean, I can give a concrete example, Pastor, and this is something that we talked about both at a meeting with the DOJ and the city attorneys, and then also in public. But one of the things that should be happening with regard to engagement is a reporting to various precincts about the findings with regard to types of crime, but the police response to the crime. What do you call it when you contact people? Contact. Oh, we have a phrase for that. It's not contact interviews, but something that amounts to contact interviews. We're not seeing that done, and these are very specific actions that should be accomplished. And I don't see them mentioned in the report. We do see, for example, when it comes to community-based mental health services, we see some reports that, for example, the city has continued to use the Portland Street response to engage, but there's, again, these seem to be like baby steps in the right direction. And we are almost reporting the same information over and over again. I'm just concerned that we could make bigger steps. And again, it's not just the training. What are we doing with regard to the challenges with the need for a culture shift and attitude shift within in policing? We're not hearing enough reports of activities in those areas. And so I'm just looking at what we're hearing and what we're not hearing and thinking there's got to be a better way to capture our expectations and to encourage the police to make bigger, more profound changes.
This is a great discussion. I do want to make sure we're kind of staying focused on what we're trying to accomplish in this meeting and the time we have left for this item. So we have about 15 minutes left, and the goal is to complete the next two boxes here. So what I'm hearing repeated is kind of echoes of the above box. Is that accurate?
If from my perspective, but yeah,
You overlap both
my
of them, right?
colleagues, yeah.
And do we see any differences between the two?
Now you're splitting hairs.
Well, when you say differences between the two, what do you mean, Dory? Is there another way you could phrase that to help us?
I guess the way I would think about that, so this is the way the group sees the implementation of an independent monitor benefiting communities of color. Are there any different ways or additional ways that it would improve outcomes for persons with mental illness? Is there anything to add on or adjust slightly or anything like that? I mean, of course, we do know the two subjects are kind of differently implicated by the settlement agreement. That is an area where my mind would go on this subject.
I believe it has to be looked with a racial equity lens on everything. And the independent monitor needs to look at everything with a racial equity lens. And the language and how it's presented. Also, who are held accountable for implementing these recommendations need to be brought forward if they're not. So, I mean, you got unions, you got bosses, you got people that will hint, hint, wink, wink, don't worry about it, I got you covered type of attitude. You know, don't say nothing, hush, hush. There's a lot of that goes on where hopefully recommendations like this, we can put in bullet points of saying we need audits, we need racial equity audits. And I'm probably going a little bit of this into shot spotters, but the technology needs to be racially equity inclusion in the technology. Like the technology knows when racial equity is not being performed, or when they're putting in these numbers, the technology knows that racial equity is not being used.
I have some instances because I'm sitting up here looking at the most recent COCO report, and I'm looking at areas where we need compliance, and we need, because it's non-compliance, but initial steps taken, and then where there's partial compliance. And I'm looking at a couple of them, like this would affect, for example, people who are in both demographics, and that's to reassess, for example, the officers' ideas of what de-escalation is. So if I were to take that, which is something that we've only gotten partial compliance on, and add it to this recommendation here, I would say that it will, again, promote the need for some action from management to actually spell out what are the steps that are being taken that are considered in compliance or out of compliance, so we can promote what needs to be done. Because, for example, in the COCO quarterly report, April 2022 to June 30th, 2022, it notes a paragraph that says, reassess all officer characterizations of de-escalation. So that says to me that maybe there's some gaps or some ambiguity in how either officers are reporting how they de-escalate, or there's some problems with a lack of training so that they can accurately and adequately de-escalate. So if I were to try and put that in terms of a language for a recommendation, it comes right back to this whole thing again of request metrics of actual steps taken, or more prominently present what's not being done so that we can address it and hold the responsible parties accountable. Am I making sense, Dory?
Celeste, you said it right there. It's earlier, and I'm trying to not cause accidents out here and be safe on this road. It is that, and I get excited hearing that too, what you just said, is that the difference between the two is almost like a handshake right now. You know, it's not going far enough. We need someone that's going to go just as deep as what has happened in history of the reason why the shootings and everything, and then wanting to have transparency, want the Bureau to be open, and things that are giving like sort of like what you just said, wink winks, or I'm gonna use the word wink wink. It might not be a wink, but the best way I can say it is close enough to say that holding people accountable to the language of what it is, such as not seeing I could be making a statement that I'm not very clear with here, but in one report, not seeing the discipline of a plan for officers, and that plan, what does it? It's not very clear. I don't know what that means. It's not clear, and they don't have a plan. I think we want to be able to talk straight to that. If it's not a partial, or it might be moving toward it. I haven't read it all right now to be clear in all of the things that I'm saying, because I'm very careful about the audience that I'm speaking to, and I'm sounding like I'm rambling. But right now, because I'm unfortunately not in a place where I can be in front of documents and reading and be prepared to this statements. I just wanted to say again, it is just being straight to the point, like Celeste was saying, clear, very clear, so we can say why and why not. It's getting done.
Thank you, Pastor Wisner. Can I go a little right here real quick? Dory, I know we got like 7 minutes. Can I go a little right real quick? I wanted to hear somebody's opinion, if they don't mind speaking, and it's Marlon Marion, if he wouldn't mind, if he had something to maybe chime in on this.
Oh, Marlon's here. Hi, Marlon.
Yes. I don't know if he would like to speak a little or maybe not.
I actually do want to speak a little bit, but I feel like right now at this stage, like this is my first time hearing that this is coming this way. So I'm learning a lot about the different perspectives on this recommendation. So I didn't even know this was coming. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around my thoughts on that. But I do have some thoughts, particularly around the stuff that you were talking about with the racial equity and all that kind of stuff, and would love your input. And I don't want to take away from the agenda, but at some point before the end of the day, before the end of the meeting, I would love to make a pitch for an opportunity for the members here to chime in and get some input on what we're doing around racial equity plan, our new racial equity plan, and how they can get involved and learn more about it. So, but I don't want to deter us from this. I'm actually trying to figure out what's going on with this recommendation, and then at some point I might chime in when I have a clearer understanding of what's going on here. But thank you for calling me in, Byron. Sorry.
No problem, man. I appreciate you being here tonight. Dory, so how, with the time that we have and this recommendation, that part we're working on, from what you've heard from all of us, go ahead. I mean, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is maybe it seems like the group is really still sort of working out the thoughts about the framing of the recommendation as a whole, and sort of wants to spend more time there before kind of addressing these questions. And so I think we can probably move on, because I don't think we're making too much progress here.
Okay.
if that makes sense to everybody else. And maybe I agree with that. Maybe we should have a sit down, Celeste and Byron, and try to do it where we exactly have, maybe it's just one point. It's just one specific from this group, the race equity, how we see it. And it'll have probably be all three, because it all says the same thing from what I see. Those three questions are there.
Yes, we do. We do work in public meetings. So that's kind of, that's sort of the space we work in. So
Well, yeah, and that's why this is not complete, to be perfectly honest. We just framed a question or two to get public input. We're supposed to do this in public, so we're not going to come to you with a fully formed plan, because the idea is to solicit public input. And
Yes.
if we're feeling like we're not at that point yet, that's okay. We do have a timeline, but it's okay that we don't have it totally worked out.
exactly.
Yeah.
And thanks for helping clarify that then. Again, I'm like Byron at this point. I appreciate knowing that it has to be open to the group here.
Yeah, so I think, a lot of good sort of conceptual framing around this subject. And I think we'll come back around on this, after we, spend a little more time fleshing this out. But some good work done on it so far, I think. Looks like Jared has a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Dory. I appreciate the conversation. And one of the things I heard a consistent theme for the questions that are posed is that a monitor, will hasten the city's compliance with the settlement agreement, which will allow the city to seek bigger and better reforms that might be, more geared towards a racial equity lens. And I think that's a very legitimate position. It's one I've heard community members make. It's one I've heard the court make as a reason for why a monitor might be better, because we're not making the progress we expected to make. And sometimes that's the jurisdiction, sometimes that's the monitor. I do want, this type of recommendation is a lot of process-based monitor, independent versus COCO versus DOJ. I mean, there's going to be a monitor. The monitor is only going to be looking at the settlement agreement. There may be, racial equity problems with the settlement agreement and the content. I've heard that argument as well. But this, who decides? It's hard, I think, to craft specific rationales for advancing these types of equity when it's just a different body. I mean, it's going to depend on who that body is and what they do. And that's the second half of what Sarah was saying. What does the monitor look like? But whether to have a monitor, I think, it's a good position to say, it will hasten compliance, and that's good for the mental health community. It's good for the communities of color, and will allow the city to go do bigger and better things. So I did hear, that's what I pulled out of this conversation. I thought it was productive, and I thought it makes a lot of sense what I heard everyone discuss. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I concur. And I think my kind of understanding of where we are in the recommendation process is sort of to a certain extent is sort of a yes, no. Yes, independent monitor, well, that would be the reason to make the recommendation. And there are certainly other opportunities for input and participating in kind of those areas where Sarah was mentioning, and that kind of stuff. But that my understanding is that would be further along in the process. And so I think maybe that will help with some of the framing too as we move forward with this process. And of course, I'm open to any clarification there too. But that's kind of how it helps me to think about it a little bit.
How you want to do on the bulletin 3, or
I think hopefully that one will be self-explanatory.
okay.
Once we get there, I think we can put a pin in it for now and take this 10-minute break, if that sounds good to everybody.
Celeste, Pastor?
Works for me.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I'll see everybody. Oh, go ahead.
Also, I would just, you can go ahead and set the break. I was just gonna say I'm coming around a pass where I'm in this area that is gonna be probably spotty Wi-Fi.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see you back here and everybody else back here at 7:05.
Recording stopped.
Just a second here.
Recording in progress.
All right. Okay, so I will hand it back over to Byron to get us started on the next agenda item.
Thank you, Dory. Before I switch off to that, I want to answer Pamela Fitzsimmons' question. If she can leave the answer or rebuttal in the chat. If you insist on monitoring being local, how do you avoid bringing in someone who isn't already marked by local politics? Well, I think there will have to be a vetting process and a true background check with a racial equity lens on it. Again, as I will repeatedly say, to make sure that is not the case, because we already know how politics run. So that was it. And okay, and so now we're moving on to the government surveillance, racial equity, and mental health, which is the shot spotters. And this is a full recap of the PCCEP full meeting that we had on January 18th. And PCCEP members expressed the concerns about impact of technology on communities of color, surveillance, etc. The second one says PCCEP members identified need for more community input. First is technology. First is the technology a good fit for Portland? Second, if so, how will technology be implemented and administrated? And now this is the third step on the PCCEP, which is the PCCEP next step, community engagement subcommittee to plan town halls or other community engagement events. Now let's see, now to the next one. So we're here, I'm assuming tonight, to develop a list of considerations that will help the community engagement subcommittee plan these events and identify community partners. Did I follow that right, Dory?
You're doing a great job.
So the next slide we have, I'm on the slide 11, thank you. Where would gunshot detection technology be implemented? Based on the information from other cities and statements from City of Portland officials, GDT would be implemented in areas most impacted by gun violence. These are areas disproportionately communities of color. Discussion question: what do we know about surveillance in communities of colors? Do any historical examples come to mind? And this is something that I want the community to think about. Do any historical examples come to mind? Recent examples, incidents from daily lives? So if you can feed off of that, I would definitely appreciate it. So with the first bullet point on this is, where is the city considering piloting gunshot detection technology? And piloting, for people who may not know, is do a test run, a 6-month test run, 4-month, 12-month test run. So that's what they mean by piloting a gunshot detection technology. Second bullet point, framing questions. Let's see. Am I going too far or too fast, Dory?
I think it's up to you. We could definitely pause on that first one and kind of
elaborate on that a little
way
bit,
and then move on. Or we could go through them all and do it all at once. It's whatever you think.
Okay. Celeste, Pastor Wisner.
I'm open if we run right through them and then come back to topic.
Yeah, I think that would be most helpful. So people can, I mean, there might be some overlapping statements or questions people have.
Okay, I appreciate that. The second bullet point is framing questions. What do we know about government surveillance in communities of color? Second bullet point, what do we know about surveillance and mental health, which is very important. That second one is something I want a lot of feedback from the community, hopefully. The third one, what are PCCEP goals under the settlement agreement? The third bullet point is a new one, deliverable. List of considerations for community engagement subcommittees. Let's see. And that is it right there. Now with the bullet, not necessarily, okay, I'm gonna just go back up to the top and reiterate. Where is the city considering piloting gunshot detection technology? I'm gonna defer to Celeste or Pastor Weiser, and I will go last. And we'll hear from anybody else if we can get through these.
Okay, now, we're discussing this question right here on the slides right now. What do we know about surveillance in communities of color?
Yes, we'll go there.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I want to say is that with regard to Portland, well, Oregon and then Portland's history of communities of color, we have to be really honest and blunt and say no communities of color were really wanted. The Constitution here really did not want the quote unquote Negro problem. I mean, that's the way it was written and governing documents and in the Constitution. So any population, any community was going to suffer some increased surveillance and policing to keep folks in line. And the use of surveillance historically in communities of color has been kind of a not only a tool of, I'll just call it psychological terrorism, but of increasing stress in the community. And it also sometimes serves to reframe what are normal human behaviors in terms of criminalized behaviors. It changes the way those normal human behaviors, like maybe hanging out in the street and talking, or maybe the type of clothing being worn, and criminalizes those cultural expressions or those human expressions. And so we know that in the history of this country, surveillance has led to either a siege mentality and making people feel over-policed, overstressed, disregarded, and in concern or fear for their rights. But it also, it's counterproductive because it destroys and diminishes an attempt at having a discourse between the police and the community. There's no shared vision of what community or public safety looks like. There's more of an occupying attitude. And so these are some of the things that Portland has experienced. These are some of the things that nationwide you found in communities of color, and especially Black communities. And so that's just one of the aspects that I see from, my 30 plus years of living here in Portland, and then having experience in the cities I've lived in California and back east. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Pastor?
I agree 100%. And the only add I would say with the subject of history, which is recorded, we know that through documents of the FBI, how they sent in people with Malcolm X, targeted leaders such as Martin Luther King, and going forward, where that the distrust of any type of system monitoring was always something the community of colors are aware of, techniques or how that they do, as you said. And I can't speak specifically in the Oregon history. I know the history of Oregon, where that it did from going down to Salem, and the Day of Acknowledgement did acknowledge certain things that they use, laws and things against people of color here. That was down at in 2000, I believe, possibly 2001, 2000 something, when they did the Day of Acknowledgement. So that is definitely recorded of what the community of colors have faced with here in the city and state.
Thank you, Pastor. I wanted to add on to that. Dory, how are we going about this? Is this something we're going to bring up with the full PCCEP committee to write a recommendation? Or how are we going?
My understanding is that sort of next and chronologically, you know, the next thing to come up on the calendar is the community engagement subcommittee. And I know they're interested in planning some community engagement events. And so it ultimately, the full PCCEP definitely could decide to write recommendations based on that. Yes. And Byron, I wanted to make sure you, although you are chair and presiding, that you also, of course, can weigh in on any of these questions.
Oh, most definitely.
I want to hold that space for you too. I know it can be a lot running these meetings sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dory, for the confidence. I wanted to bring in Marlon Marion, if he didn't mind. I was pretty sure this was something he was. Is he there or no?
I don't think Marlon's on.
I don't think he's on. I'm checking our participant list and I don't see him still here, Byron.
Okay.
And can I say this too? My add to what Dory said. I have excused myself from the areas of the technology language between shot spotters and ego technology, and a lot of this because I don't want the persuasion to feel I'm one or the other. So some of the things that I'll say is reserved because I don't want it to be misconstrued. So far, I found out that a lot that I've said at the beginning of even shot spotters, you were anti this or anti that, when the technology is what I'm more in the areas of trying to make sure that with the topic of this in people's ears are educated and informed, just because there has been a lack of understanding, because it's maybe not new to anyone else, but it's definitely new to me to understand how that these technologies are working. So I just wanted to say some of the comments I have are going to be directed, or I may not say anything at all.
Thank you, Pastor, for that. Let's see, we have the second bulletin. What do we know about surveillance and mental health? Now, this is a big topic for me. What we were writing down, pretty much what we had in the recommendation. It doesn't build anything. The community doesn't feel safe in different BIPOC communities. Who has to deal with this? Mental health is already dealing with it enough, and then to add on a barrier and have somebody, I guess, ghostly watching you in the back of your mind is not something that you want to deal with every day.
Well, it definitely creates stress. And again, you know, one of the things I want to reiterate is when everyday behaviors can be reframed and called criminal behaviors, that leads to additional stress. And there's lots of documented connections between institutional and interpersonal racism and mental health, and how it breaks down health and how it harms mental health. People don't thrive under a siege mentality. And being under surveillance, being felt that your every move is being watched, and that anything you do can be reframed to be criminal does not does not make for a healthy environment. And you know, just I'll do two anecdotal examples. One is during the time of, I want to say, the early 2000s, late 90s, it was a fashion statement to wear your hat, your baseball cap or any such cap, you know, sporting cap backwards. But that became synonymous with criminal behavior. And I would be in meetings where people would make broad statements. And by meetings, I mean meetings like a liquor license team meeting or Bureau Advisory Committee meeting where the public or safety committee or neighborhood watch trainings where people will come in and say, well, I don't like this group of folks because they wear their hats backwards and they must be up to nothing. I mean, nothing good. You know, and that's one anecdotal aspect of just how being under surveillance does not help mental health of a community. You know, another aspect, and I know some people might say this is a bit of a reach, but how many of you knew that the FBI, for example, kept tabs on Aretha Franklin, trying to tie her into extremist behavior? So when someone who brings joy to your community through art is being watched and criminalized, that further devalues you and your idea of self-worth in a community. When I moved here in Portland, it was very uncommon to find Black people, people of color in general, but especially Black people, being able to purchase property east of 15th Street. And that was actually a city of not state, you know, ordinance or statute. And so knowing that you are an unwanted person, knowing that you live in an area that is over policed, knowing that even the most benign behaviors can be reframed and criminalized does not give you a sense of living in a healthy environment, of being valued by society, of being protected. And so you add that on top of the fact that Portland had no problem disinvesting in some of these neighborhoods and allowing them to be subject to predatory economic forces like predatory home loans and what have you. It adds to a feeling of being devalued and sometimes of a kind of retaliatory attitude. It's like, well, I got to protect myself through any means necessary. And it does not open a community up to having what feels like safe dialogue and creating a shared vision of community safety, of public safety. It leads to a siege mentality and feeling like you're being attacked. Now, you can apply that same concept to those who address and deal with and live with mental health challenges. Because when you find in the news this person was, you know, was mistreated or even killed, you know, because they're having a psychotic break, instead of any more humane and compassionate measures being used, you feel as though, again, you're devalued. You've lost any sense of being a human being, and that you have any chance of getting any kind of compassion from community. And I'm well aware that there are people who take advantage of a situation. I'm well aware that there are people who might have an intersectionality of mental health challenges and maybe being homeless and being criminal minded, but that's not everybody. And even they don't necessarily need to be assaulted or shot. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, why are we bringing yet another tool of, I'll just call it oppression and over policing, rather than a tool of community connectivity and compassion?
Thank you for that, Celeste. So what I'm hearing from you is compassion, understanding, compatibility. Those are some real meat words right there that hopefully that can be resonated to some people. The third bullet point is, what are the PCCEP goals under the settlement agreement? Are they deliverable? And I can say no on my part, because we are still here speaking about this. Or it should never be a topic right now. Should we or should we not have shot spotters? It shouldn't be a topic. Pastor Wisner, did you have anything to say, sir?
On the, are we on which bullet point?
You can do surveillance, mental health, and what are PCCEP goals under the settlement agreement, and are they deliverable?
I'm gonna say that as where we are as a team, I'm in full support. I'm cautious of commentary language, and I don't want to use mine, because there's a place of voices that I would not, and those are victims, want not to be understood in my descriptions or understanding of what it is, because I'm agreeing with everything Celeste has said, from the areas of history to even the fear of, even with people who have lived in communities and had to have this type of overreach in there. If I had a comment about areas of detection, I recall one day I was upstairs in my home, and my wife was downstairs. I live on 96 in Prescott. So if you do a area of where that it was 96, and then you diagonally look across, and you will see across Prescott. In the middle will be like as if an A-shaped diagonal. And all of a sudden, I heard these shots, and they were rapid. I looked out the window, and I seen on Prescott someone was shooting toward 96, and there was two cars. And where they were was in between my living room and my dining room, and my wife sits in the dining room. I screamed, "Get down." And the bullets were rapid. Pop, 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 pop. I was in adrenaline because I wanted to know my wife where she sit, that she was safe, and I'm screaming to her, "Stay down, get down, get down." At that point, we couldn't even get the call to make a call. That's why I reserve a lot of my comments, because when something as horrible as I've seen in Los Angeles during times of heightened gun violence, children getting shot in the middle of a quickness of a bullet, what type of help can be helped, and the areas of what it is that we can do. I'm not the expert. All I know is I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the safety of my family. I'm concerned about the safety of those who have lost their children through this gun violence in the areas of shots. So again, my part of where that there's understanding, I get it. I do get it. I get it historically, and I get it personally. As everybody already know, my son was a victim 2003 of black on black crime, shot. And then again, I shared in a meeting, I believe, at the IPAC, of the extraordinary violence that many of us probably have in our own family that has been shot and victimized, and no justice for that. So I leave that as my thought commentary. And again, I'm gonna say full support of what we as a committee and a group, because that's what I believe in, the unity and trust and truth of what we're trying to accomplish. And that's not my opinion.
Thank you for sharing that, Pastor Wisner. I think we all appreciate you sharing that personal background on the subject. And I certainly, I absolutely know that, you know, everyone here tonight, and certainly our PCEP members, are united in their concerns about gun violence in this city, and hoping to improve outcomes for all of our communities. And, you know, I appreciate that we can hold space and for diversity of tactics and perspectives in these meetings, and, you know, understand the different places we're all coming from and different ways we might view the subject. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dory.
So did we want to hear any community input on any of these questions?
Thank you for going into that. I was just getting ready.
I did respond to something that Natalie said, but if you want to discuss it, I'd love to have you articulate it to the group, Natalie.
Is that Natalia? If Natalia is comfortable sharing. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hi everyone. I am a Portland State student. I'm in their Master of Public Administration program. So I'm spend a lot of time reading about policy and law and things like that. And so that's where my comment is coming from, that as I'm learning more and more about how you know, cases of law are coming up through the courts and who owns the data and who you know, like how responsibility and accountability happens when that data is owned publicly versus privately. That's a big concern that I have. So I'm wondering if anybody else has something to share about that.
Yes, Natalie, that is very good point. Do we have any comments from the community on anything that we discussed tonight? And specifically starting with Natalie, what she had to say.
And Celeste, I'm reading your comment right now, so.
I don't think we have anything from the community, Dory.
All right. A rare moment for PCCEP. Okay, so shall we jump ahead?
Well, I have a question, and this might be broad enough to get some response and see if it works. Do you feel we're on the right path by looking at not only the implications of gunshot detection technology, but just the possibility of over-policing, period? Are we on the right path? Are we missing the mark? Because I want to make sure we get as broad as input as possible from the community on this. And I know there's a spectrum of concerns. You know, I mean, I've been shot at, that they were aiming for me. So I know that fear and that terror, you know, but I also know that there's got to be, because we are an intelligent species, I know there's got to be more than one response. And we should look for something that is not purely responsive, but maybe preventative, you know, as well. And so I'm for looking at something that has a lot more of a nuance and covers maybe more of some of the causative elements, you know. But I want to hear from the community because that's just my take on it.
Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, at Cop Watch, we've discussed the possibility that with this type of technology that the police will like be called to a neighborhood, you know, even say from sometimes like from a car backfiring or something. And so it's going to result in a lot of, you know, police cars with the sirens going and everything coming into a community, and how that can be very disruptive. And would it really help prevent the violence? And I am personally of the opinion, and I think some other people too, that that this violence has resulted from people, not all in all cases, but people being so frustrated and not having any outlet, not being able to have jobs, housing becoming harder and harder. I mean, you just get, you know, like we all have like a threshold for our feelings, our anger, our fear. And when you're in a place where you're, like you say, constantly harassed, you don't have enough money, you know, like I sit here in this safe, comfortable environment with food in the fridge. And if you don't have that, your threshold is going to be lower, I think, or you're not going to have a lot of other options to deal with different situations. So I think that dealing with that is more important, like looking at the housing inequities, the lack of housing, the job discrimination. I think that is the most important thing. And so anyway, that's my opinion. So.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was very passionate. I was just wanting to say that, you know, this shot spotter is presented to us to feel it's protecting the community. It's don't worry about it. It's safe. You know, this works. It'll help us stop crime. It'll help us stop shooting. I don't know if it will or not. I might sound definitive in saying that I don't want it. And I want to say my history with police and surveillance, maybe that has something to do with it, because I've been under surveillance. I've been followed, and it doesn't feel good. It definitely made me angry that someone would have the audacity to follow me and watch me to make sure I'm doing right. And with that said, living in a free country, I don't see how that's free for an African American person who's lived here for 48 years. It's scary how this thing, again, how we're talking about it. There's no compassion nowhere. This is an institutionalized tool to keep certain areas, certain people in line, in check. And, you know, I believe maybe if we're talking about areas to put it at, maybe put it up along 82nd. Maybe go put it over there by Reed College in Woodstock. Maybe put it on like 52nd in Belmont. You know, those places over there. If you want to invest in something outside of shot spotters, why don't you put the resources back into the community? And then, you know, we really don't have to worry about shot spotters. And, you know, I'm like Pastor Wisener and Celeste. I'm not an expert in this. And please forgive if I sound like one, because I'm not. I just know that surveilling people in that type of way does not work. If anything, it makes people rebel, and it makes people angry. And then you have innocent people taking out things on people that shouldn't be taking things out on. And then if you have a mental health problem on top of that, I think that makes that intensifies all that person's mental problems to the 10th degree, knowing that he's being followed or watched. So I hope we have any more. Do we have? And I wanted to take a quick silence on the people that got killed in California. You know, the gentleman who youth gun violence. There were 3 situations down. I don't know if anybody heard of it yet. Shot spotters, and we have these mass shootings, and it has me very, very, very concerned, especially as an African American man in the United States of America. Is there any public comment? Anybody want to interject on anything? Pastor Wisner, Celeste?
I had plenty of time, thank you. I'm holding space for other folks.
Pastor Wisner? Did we lose him? I think we lost him, Celeste. Dory, this meeting that we having tonight, is there any notes that we're keeping to take over to the next meeting?
Oh, most definitely. Absolutely, yes. I saw Barb's hand real quick. And Byron, I just want to acknowledge, I really appreciated those comments. That was really well said.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Barb Rainish, did you have a comment?
I'm happy to make a comment. It seems pretty obvious to me that there's a lot to lose, everything from financial and trust with the community, and not a lot to gain with this type of technology. I wish there was something that was believable that would make us think that it would be helpful, but for example, and thank you for bringing up the incidences in California, Byron, and the other places across the country too. This has just been a really bad couple of days. That technology wouldn't help in any of those cases, for example. And it's quite expensive technology also. And almost by definition, in order for it to quote, it seems very obvious that it's going to be deployed in a very biased way, I guess, is the best way I can say that. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Barb. I appreciate you. Marlon, Mary, and Sir, the floor is yours. If you hadn't missed anything.
Thank you all for having me here. Before I dive into what I wanted to say real quick, I just want to say that I agree with a number of people here. I don't feel like I'm convinced on ShotSpotter at all. I did a lot of research on it as well. I know I'm not speaking from the community, I'm speaking from the city, but from what I've seen, I just can't justify spending that much money on that software after all the research that I've done. And I know that ShotSpotter has made some convincing arguments and have had their own researchers and everything, but I did my own dive into the scholarly work myself. I used to work in the library. I love doing that kind of stuff. And I just found a lot of stuff that did not support bringing in that software. So it does sound like they have some convincing stuff out there. I was talking to somebody else about this as well. The only thing that I feel like is a positive is being able to get medical attention there a little bit quicker. I think there was a study or two that might have indicated that, but apart from that, I'm just personally not convinced that this is the best use of city money. And it makes me want to go back to the city core values around fiscal responsibility. I was like, are we really being fiscally responsible by bringing this software here? So that's just where I stand with it. I would love to hear and see more articles that support us bringing it here, but just based off of what I've seen so far, that's where I stand on it. That being said, I would like to just invite you all. It sounds like I'll be brief. It sounds like you all have already been informed at the last meeting. I got a message letting me know that it's already been shared, but we're in the process of developing our new racial equity plan. We're trying to have it as community informed as possible. The Police Equity Advisory Council have picked some of our main commitments. And we need a lot of community input. They've also selected all the diverse communities and organizations throughout the city in which to share with, so we've already done that. So It's online. I can drop the link in here before we leave, but we would love for you to review the commitments, to review the document, tear it apart, critique it, let us know what you want us to change, what you want us to add, what you want us to remove, what you want us to edit, what you want us to clarify more. But we want to make sure that the new racial equity plan for the next 5 years is heavily community informed. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, and I don't want to take up too much from the agenda, but I appreciate you having me here. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, Byron.
Thank you for showing up, sir. I apologize. I was supposed to be at the I was supposed to be at the meeting last night. I forgot about it, but I will definitely be at the next one. It's on the 2nd. Is that correct?
February 1st. Yep. And it'll be in the link that I'm sharing shortly.
Okay.
Yep.
Please, people, we need you to wrong word. Please, people, we need you to show up to this meeting to give your feedback so Marlon can make a very racial equity inclusion decision. Because I believe, Celeste, correct me if I'm wrong, or we got, 14 more minutes. I believe racial equity needs to be in the language of your applications needs to be in the software. So when he's typing in things, the computer can catch if it's not being racial equity. Is he being cautious of what he's doing? Is he actually doing? Because again, you have the wink, wink, nod, nod. Don't worry about it. I got you. The silent. You have that silent communication where there's nobody going to say anything. And if it can't be put into the technology that they use, I don't think we can ever fight this battle or get it done correctly. So whatever the people who are working, doing these jobs, if their job that they're doing is not based on racial equity, then there's no sense in really, it's not going to get us any further than what we are. Celeste, if you had any words, if you don't, I understand.
I think everything that can be said has been said. And it sounds like the community members who are attending feel like we're on the right track by questioning the rollout of this technology. With respect to those who feel like we need an answer, and we do, I think that we don't necessarily have to come up with the only other answers. We know that an expansion of social services is necessary. Programs like the PSR project Respond are necessary. And we feel like that's a better use of the money. And, we're going to take this information that you've given us, this input, and finish crafting some response, both in terms of the independent monitor and in response to the gunshot detection technology. And we'll also, like I said, be looking for other solutions, because we know that's not the only answer.
So let's move towards wrapping up here, I think is what I'm hearing. So we, of course, as with every meeting, will produce notes from this meeting. But I think we've heard a lot about, concerns about how gunshot detection technology intersects with kind of the concerns raised on racial equity, mental illness, surveillance, all of that. We will reflect that in the notes. Also hearing, a theme of course, concerns about gun violence in our community. So we will share these notes with the Community Engagement Subcommittee, and then make a note that we will definitely need to partner with some community organizations who have perspective and stakeholders engaged in this racial equity work, and the mental health community. So I think those are some of the takeaways I'm hearing from this discussion, and something they can hopefully pick up with their work moving forward. Anything I'm missing from that recap?
Not at all. It was perfectly said, Celeste.
You mean Dory?
Oh,
I think I heard it as
I'm
Byron
so
asking Celeste
sorry.
if
Oh
she had
my
anything
God.
else.
Okay, yes, I'm fine. That is perfect.
Okay. Well, you know me and
Oh my
Celeste. You know,
gosh.
there's-
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So great. All right. So I think we can move towards unless there's anything else. Next slide, please. Oh, well, yes, of course, we also have our open public comment period. I feel like that kind of got wrapped up with everything else. But we can most definitely open the floor at this time. If anyone had
Anybody
any
got it?
comments, yeah.
Comments or any parting wishes? Thank you for attending. This is my first ever holding a holding a forum of this type. I thank you so much for everybody for being here.
Yes, excellent job, Byron. Thank you. And we will take a look at our upcoming meetings real quick. So we do have that Cocal Town Hall and the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee meeting next week. I know they are also going to be working on the monitor recommendation, community engagement the following week. They are going to be working on, planning this event, I think, that we've been talking about in this meeting. Full PCCEP meeting, I think that will be finishing that recommendation and holding a vote. And then we have that status conference hearing. Yeah. All right. So thank you everybody for attending tonight. Our PPB representatives, DOJ, city attorneys, all of our PCCEP members, members of the public. Next slide, please. And all of our accessibility support, of course. I hope you all have a great evening. And I think we can end it early. So the time is 7:53 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.